Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz. Continuing on with our AFL Preseason series, we've got the Brisbane Lions and Adelaide Crows to review. Very special guest, big Brisbane Lions supporter from the perfect and the one of the best podcasts out there. He's got the swordplay, third man up. They do it all. Supercoach DR, how are you, mate?
Very, very good. Thanks, Wiz. Lovely introduction as always, mate. You're always too kind when I come on. But yeah, going really well. Thanks, mate. Very, very keen to review the game between the Lions and the Crows. We didn't quite get up in the end, but could be a more relevant team than what we're thinking, depending on how the weather treats us and what the AFL decides to potentially do with this tropical cyclone game, Swizz. So, yeah, some unanswered questions at the moment, but yeah, looking forward to sitting down and having a chat with you, mate.
Yeah, well, before we jump into the weather, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via Supercoach Insider 100 or Swizz26 for me directly. For those people, very few people out there who aren't following you already, mate, I know you've got it listed there. Where can they find you?
Yeah, just at Supercoach_DR on X. I've got some Instagram accounts, but it's mainly X, mate. So, yeah, anyone wants to DM me, have a chat, always very, very happy to do it there, mate.
And get the preseason guide show. Those notes will be in the show link afterwards, or the show notes. Swizz 10 if you want a discount still on that. That's a great season guide that you guys have put together. So now definitely download that if you haven't already.
Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated.
Okay, so up at Brisbane at their training facility out there in Springfield, we had the Brisbane Lions 13-16-94 defeated by the Adelaide Crows, who came back at the end 14-13-97, which was not a bad hit out for both sides.
I think it was. Obviously, the difference being that Brisbane have the opening round game. The Crows have a little bit more of a break. So how much do you read into that? Were Adelaide going a little bit harder, spending a few more petrol tickets? I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, mate, as we know, the results don't really matter with these matches. I think it's all about getting your hit out. Hopefully, no major injuries. I know that Stars went down for us. He'll probably be missing the opening round with concussion. But apart from that, pretty clean bill of health, which is always good.
Yeah, mate, and that's the main thing in that. And I think it was, yeah, as you said, the Crows came back at the end, a little bit of, maybe it was resting a few players and, stuff like that, which always happens in these sort of situations. But nonetheless, it's still, there was a part of me that thought like, oh, maybe the Lions let this get a little bit closer just so that both teams can practice those sort of scenarios, because you don't get that opportunity to, like, I know, I think Collingwood and maybe North Melbourne Geelong, one of those two last year actually properly did that and had let's play 5 minutes each end and play a little bit of that scenario-based football. But, to actually have a chance there. And I think, those sort of last 2, 3, 4 minutes, the players, their natural instincts sort of do turn on and they still want to try to get a win. And it's just kind of good practice to have that scenario come out. Okay, yeah, the Lions didn't get up in this stage, but, they, a little bit of inaccuracy and a couple of things, go against you. But it's a great opportunity just still for the young players to get that opportunity to play in such a close game. And, the coach now has something to work on.
That's right. And it's always good to get a decent hit out. I think one thing that you don't really want in these games is a huge blowout. You really do want to get tested before the start of the season. And looking at the scores here, it was obviously a pretty close match. And you're right, the competitive juices really do come out at the end. I don't think there'd be a player from either side that didn't want to win that game. But, yeah, really good hit out for both players, for both teams, sorry. And we'll talk about who's going to be relevant for us this year, because even as a Lions man, I've still got some question marks on some of my boys, certainly some question marks on some Adelaide players as well. But keen to dive into it, buddy.
Yeah, let's do it. So now this comes with a massive asterisk. So we'll go through these relevant players in a moment. But at time of recording, Brisbane are playing Geelong in round 0. But as you said at the start of the show, 130k cyclone winds are about to apparently hit Brisbane. If the AFL is smart about this and actually is proactive for once, they probably should come out. Now we're talking here on a Sunday, so it depends when you're watching that this week. But Monday, come out and say, we understand the public are going to get. It's going to be a struggle for them to get to the game. We might have a lower crowd because of how bad the weather's affected. We want it to kick off. wherever they move the game, there could be rain as well. But to have this sort of weather, and we know weather people sometimes, it can be a bit off. But a cyclone coming in suggests it's going to be, let's put the hatches down and really barricade ourselves in the house. There's an obvious solution here with Brisbane and Geelong both sharing the round 3 bye together. And if they're smart on the Monday, they probably should come out and say, hey, you guys, why don't you just play the game in round 3? And that will completely change our discussion that we're about to have.
Absolutely. If that's the case and Brisbane no longer have the early bye, this changes things completely. And watch the stocks of players like Neil, Zorko go through the roof, in my opinion, particularly with all the injury carnage that we've had to some of our Uber premiums. It'll make those players in particular a lot more relevant. And I think the other, and I don't think this is a great solution, but we do play Geelong twice this year. So could they potentially swap the home games around? And instead of playing in Brisbane, we play in Geelong to start the year and then switch that. I'm not too sure, but you're right. The AFL really do need to be proactive on this. You don't want to be sitting on your hands and then having to make a really rushed decision when it gets closer to the match. So I'd love that scenario. We just play in round 3, but who knows what the AFL are going to do, Swizz. But let's just have our fingers crossed at this stage.
Well, I guess it gets hard with that sort of scenario if it's just for round 0, because there's still been Premier Cricket being played on Geelong's ground. Not that these groundsmen can't do a fantastic job, but there is complications around trying to get the ground switched around. Marvel, as you know, just played a Green Day concert there, so those surfaces get a bit chopped up straight after concerts. We saw what happened with the Taylor Swift concert. I think last year when it was going through the same scenario. So these are all things that the AFL will be then taking into account. But just the fact that there is a bye weekend for both clubs, if they're, as you said, proactive on this and let them know with enough advance time, there is a very simple solution to all this.
Hope that's the case. Hope
that's the case. Because these percentages are about to change. All right, let's talk the Brisbane premiums first, because there are a few. There's one guy in my team at the moment, which is Zorko. The thing with the Lions is they've got such a nice draw. I don't know how you guys have been gifted with such a great start to the year. Play my boys, North Melbourne and West Coast in that first 6 weeks. But yeah, Zorko did Zorko things. No Kitty Coleman there. It just gets better and better with age. Preseason game still plays 80% time and goes 123. Lachie Neale things. Looked so clean with the ball. It's hard to knock him. Josh Dunkley, had a little bit less time on ground, but he's still an absolute bull. Slightly down on the sort of the couple other options we've got there, but those 3 premiums is definitely need to be considered. And then there's a mid-pricer, which we'll lump into this as well. And he's obviously Will Ashcroft, just won the Norm Smith medal. Only played the 70% game time, but 93 Supercoach. And if we go back to the daily fantasy stars, you can see those points per minute from a Supercoach point of view. And he had the 1.04, which was quite higher than quite a lot of the other players on the ground. So if he played the full game, he was going to turn up as well.
Interesting, mate. Now, we'll quickly talk about the CBAs or touch on the CBAs. Now, Lachie Neale, absolute mainstay there, and we know this, but over 90% CBAs for Neale. So let's just lock him in, as we all knew, as that absolute M1 for us, that number 1 cog in the midfield. Now, what's interesting was that Huey McCluggage didn't spend as much time as probably what I was expecting. So I think that it seems like Will Ashcroft may be slightly preferred as compared to Huey McCluggage, but I think those 2 blokes will rotate a lot. Will Ashcroft get enough CBAs to be relevant? Well, I think so. It's what are your expectations and what do you want from him? I think with all these premiums, what we need to look at is that DVP, their early run, because someone like, a Zorko, if you look at that DVP against his opponents, wow, it is just so juicy. It's almost unfair. And with someone at his age, one thing that I think may happen, and this is a bit of a prediction for me, is that he's going to have a red hot start to the season based on who his opponents are. People are then going to almost feel pressured to bring him in because he's scoring so well. And by that time, hopefully for me, if I start him and you, if we start him, he's gone up a little bit in price. He's got a really, really nice average. and then that run starts to go, people jump on, and it's going to be potentially a little bit late. I'd much rather start with this bloke, even with that early buy, rather than jump on him later. And someone like Lachie Neale, even with that early buy as well, there's no Bond. There's no Butters. Goulden's gone. Like, how many red flags are there in the top 10 most expensive midfielders? Sarong's probably looking like the safest bet for you at the moment, and he only scored 125 plus once, I think, from rounds 10 to 24 last year. So there's no guarantees with what he does. So I think with the ceiling, the consistency of blokes like Neale and Zorko with their early run and their potential ceiling games, I see them as being extremely relevant. You know what you're going to get. I don't think Neale really got out of third gear. Zorko slowed up towards the end of the game as well, and he didn't even need a heap of kick-ins to get a decent score and get enough of the ball. So I really like Neale and Zorko in particular. I just don't know if you can run with both of them at the same time, Swizz. Those two ultra premiums with those buys. I know other people are running, say, a Zorko and a Whitfield, but they're different buys, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. You've got Dacos on this buy as well. So he's massive competition for Lachie Neale. It's a pod play going Neale over Dacos at the moment. Dunkley, look, I think just solid. He really took the foot off the gas, and his CBA rate lowered towards the end of the game. But I think he's going to be a safe-ish type pick. But I probably like the upside of Neale and Zorko more. So Dunkley isn't high on my wish list at the moment. It's probably the other two there. And then you've got Will Ashcroft as well, who the issue is, mate, it is competition, isn't it? Like, how many Cherrers, I'm not huge on today, but Day, Olivers, if you're into a Peatling type, how many of these blokes can we actually run through the midfield? I'm not too sure. So that's probably my assessment there, quick assessment on those four premium players, mate.
Yeah, and it does make it hard because, how many can you fit in? Zorko does really interest me. Outside of sort of North Melbourne, 96 and West Coast, 93 last year. And, they massively had the wood on them anyway. But the other teams that the Lions start up against, so last year, Collingwood, he had a 127 and a 108. Swannies, he got a 129. The Tigers, a 161. And the Saints, he had, there was a 141. So that's the starting teams for the Lions this year, and Zorko absolutely feasted on them last season. I think that's a combined average. I think your good mate Roscoe was saying about 118. So it's there's a guy who I feel like he's going to get a fast start. If he's going to get managed, it's going to be later in the year, and I would rather sort of start somebody like that in that line. Especially with the defender premium or the defender rookies being so weak, we need sort of more premiums there. So why not start with one of the guys who's going to be one of the best premiums and get the Lions kicking up in the right way. So if they are playing round zero, Zorko is the one I would prefer. And then, as you said, I can sort of manage around those buys where, if it is a case of, you're sort of choosing between Neale and Dacos, it becomes a bit harder. Me personally, I've been trying to go the guys who don't have an early buy in the midfield, because there's rookie guys there who are going to have an early buy, who we'll talk about in particular with the Lions in a moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I'm trying to do everything I can to avoid uber premiums with early buys, but I think sometimes if you're that keen on a player and you really like their run, then I'm willing to look past that. But not too many players. I think you've got to be careful to get the right mix and balance, mate.
100%. The Will Ashcroft one is interesting because there's a lot of love for him for what he did in the grand final, and naturally that's a big reason. He's in 21% of sides at the moment. The real game changer for all that, if you want a guy who's got a different buy, who's around the same price, when we know the Olivers and Cherrers, but Will Ashcroft, going off those numbers, looks like he's going to be the third banana in there. So you've got Neale Dunkley, Will Ashcroft. Finn Callaghan now has stepped up to be the number one guy at GWS. So that's where I think some people are now going to be probably making the decision going, if I want a guy who's going to have an early buy for the same price, am I going to take the guy who's got the better buy, who's the number one guy in there, versus the guy who's going to be the sort of third guy, might be even the fourth guy on some weeks, depending on what they do with McCluggage. They've still got Jared Berry around, his brother. So, there are some options there. So it does make me, until so that Finn, the Tom Green injury where it put, Callaghan ahead in the pack at the Giants. It didn't end. I was looking at Will. It's now slipped him down a little bit for me.
Yeah, that's a super point, a really good point you make. And even Cam Rayner, I think, will have sort of between your 10 to 30%, depending on week to week. So there are a lot of blokes, even Rat Bailey, that can run through there. So I agree with you, mate. For now, I'm not on Will Ashcroft, although I hope he has a ripping season as a linesman.
I think he will too, but it's just so hard with so many mouths to feed. Could that change if the buys move? Maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that there's mouths to feed in there. And maybe if I'm just going full mid pricer, or maybe Clayton Oliver doesn't look as sharp as what I'm hoping him to look, but that's sort of just something I've got to watch. The other thing is if the game does stay in round 0 and Will Ashcroft does come out and score like a 130 or a 140, and his break even then becomes very juicy coming into those easier games, well, then my mind might change again. So if the bye rounds as is, stay as is, and we get to have a look at Callaghan versus Ashcroft in that battle, whoever probably scores the most might dictate where I go on that one.
Yeah, fantastic. A big matchup, isn't it? 2 young superstars, 2 young guns. So, yeah, the 50-50 matchup, maybe Callaghan's way at the moment, I think.
And there's a lot of rookie options here at the Lions, but there's one obvious one, and that is we get the superstar himself, Levi Ashcroft. We can already call him that because he was so dominant in under 18s. Looked so at home in his first, I guess, proper hit out. You got to call these preseason games. This one, not the match sims. These are they're kind of proper of that. Like you got players, especially in that first half. I think they get out the cobwebs and they're probably in that sort of 3rd, 4th gear, not really going full on, but at the same time, these young players are trying to impress. And, he did everything that he had to do in a game where he did obviously have kind of a low time on ground compared to probably some of the other players there. But, the fact that he put out 80 points, kicked a goal, 23 touches, there's not too much more that Levi could have done.
Absolutely agree. Now, what's really interesting here, I was just taking a look as you were speaking then, mate, at the Lions CBAs here. So, obviously, in the first quarter, didn't see any action. Then you go to the second quarter, 28.6%, the same in the third quarter, and then nothing in the last quarter. So, if we go to his scores quarter by quarter here, so in the second quarter, he was on 36 points. So he's gone 16 in the first, 36 by halftime. 3/4 time, he's in on 49 points. So in the last quarter, with 0 CBAs, he's actually gone from 49 up to 81. And that's actually a really good sign for me, Swizz, and an underrated sign, because what that says to me is that he doesn't need to rely on CBAs to actually score well. This is a bloke that can just find the football, and he's got some underrated forward craft. And that's what I like about Levi. And speaking to people that have watched a lot of these two as juniors, this is Will and Levi, they say that Levi's got more forward craft and a little bit more of a knack for that forward role. And I like that because, as we know, there's not much space or time in that midfield. He'll get some time. He'll force his way in there. But we can't rely on huge CBA minutes for him as compared to maybe some of these other high price, like your Sheldrick, for example, who will have much more of a role with the injuries that they've got in the Sydney midfield, for example. So given the fact that he can still score well without the CBAs, I think as a forward, he'll push up to those stoppages as well. He can just find the football. So that's what I really like about Ashcroft. The only slight red flag I've got is that when I'm looking at our team, I'm thinking, okay, well, who's going to be our subs here? Who's going to be subbed off? Who's going to be our subs? Purely, and this isn't a talent thing, but purely because he's a first-year player, obviously dealt with the shoulder surgery in the off-season as well. And, hey, he's cherry ripe at the moment because he wouldn't be playing if he wasn't. But does Chris Fagan take more of a cautious approach? Because Brisbane are a team that can do that. We don't need to be playing the kids. He's playing because he's good enough and he's forced his way into that side. So that's a potential flag for me, even if he doesn't start as a sub. Are we thinking, well, who's going to come off? If we go with an extra tool like a Sam Day, for example, maybe it's him. I'm not too sure, but that's the only potential red flag there. But in saying that, I think he's that good that he may give Fags and the crew no choice just to leave him on, I think, mate. And maybe you could that's the other thing. Sorry, man, I know I'm going on and on here, but because we've got an early run, and maybe this is a red flag to our Brisbane premiums, like Zorko, could they then say, well, let's give the old fellas a bit of a rest? We've got blokes like Levi here that we can trust in performing that role. Can we then sub off maybe some of our older players if the result is pretty much, guaranteed, and nothing's ever guaranteed, but looking good by, let's just say, 3/4 time? That's another thing. So it's so hard, mate. I'm thinking of all the different scenarios about what could happen, but it's going to be circumstantial. And I'm obviously not part of the Brisbane Lions coaching panel, just a very passionate fan that's doing his best to try to get my head around what they're going to be thinking.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, I did say there's quite a few rookies to look at, but it's one position where there's a few rookies fighting, and we got to see Ty Gallop get the opportunity this week. But there is a big question mark at who's going to get that full forward or centre half forward, depending on where they're going to hit what. So Gallop was the early bolter, probably didn't work out the way that we're hoping. Obviously only the 24 points there. I still like the fact that, I think Brandon Ryan at some point will probably get an opportunity just because he's mature age. So these guys might not necessarily be for starting, but I think we need to kind of monitor this Brisbane situation. They've listed in Sam Day, who's a mid-pricer, but there is going to be potential opportunities there for the young fella. We've got Henry Smith there, who got a little bit of time at the end. Probably didn't impress as much as we wanted, but at some point, one of these Lions kids is going to, come in and have to play that role, because that's literally all they've got to replace Danaher. And they're outside of Sam Day, they're all at rookie price.
That's the toughest spot for me to pick in our predicted best 22-23, is that, let's just call it the ex-Danaher role. There's been talk that we can even go a little bit smaller there, but I don't mind Gallop. I'd like to get some games into Gallop. I just think that Day might be the one, because he can provide that extra relief in the ruck. So Day is probably the one, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, because, look, I won the Under 11's Most Courageous Award back at the Lucy Footy Club back in the day, but I've never played in the AFL football. But I just think Sam Day, this stage of his career, he's an average footballer, and he's just a plug the gap before hopefully maybe Oscar Allen decides to come across, or a player about it. Who knows? I'm not too sure, but I really see him as a short-term solution. And I think we may even just experiment from time to time during the year, because we really don't need to lock anyone in that spot currently. But I really do like the look of Gallop. He's a really talented player and got a big future ahead of him.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it does. So again, it's a player to watch if the round zero game goes ahead, because if he, there becomes a point where if a player was to kick, in that situation, 3 or 4 goals, and get that 70, 80, 90 points at his price, even though we know it might not be the case each week, you've got to sort of do the numbers and think, okay, he only might have to do it 1 or 2 times against a Richmond or a West Coast, and he could, get that 100, 150K that what we're looking for a rookie. So yes, you're looking at that score in 24. Conditions weren't great. We knew it was slippery. It's always going to be a bit like that. They're playing out at Brighton Homes Arena there in Springfield. It's, it's going to be a tough matchup, but there are easier matchups to come. And if Gallop's the guy that they're backing in, he puts up a half decent score especially against a team like Geelong. You can't ignore the fact that, at 113K, he could potentially be a forward 8 option for you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you, mate. Couldn't agree more.
Is there anybody else from the Brisbane Lions you want to talk about, mate?
Look, I think we've really covered all the relevant players. I just wouldn't be trying to be too fancy with some of these, the Bailey type picks or the Rain of these blokes. I just think there's so many better options out there this year that you need to be extremely selective, particularly because of their bye, and you just need to be super confident. So I think we both agree on someone like Zorko, but no one else, mate, that needs discussion here, I don't think.
No problems. Well, we'll move over to the other team, the Adelaide Crows, who played quite well on the other day. The one that a lot of people, we'll start off with the captain first. We'll start off with Jordan Dawson, because I have had quite a few questions about him. Did Jordan Dawson things, 24 touches, 9 tackles, kicked a couple of goals, everything you expect from a Jordan Dawson game, including everything that you now expect from a Jordan Dawson game, 135 DT, 111 Supercoach. It's why I don't have him in my team. As great of a player he is, it is this butchering of the ball, the 5 clangers, the 66% disposal efficiency. I just can't go there because I feel like he has to get a lot of it these days to, to make himself more relevant. And I don't know what's happened there because he was such a beautiful ball user a couple of seasons ago. I've had a couple of Adelaide guests turn and say he's had some injury issues last year and that's affected his kicking, but the same trend continued the other night.
It's funny, isn't it? Because a couple of years ago, people asked me, who do you think's the best kick of the game? Jordan Dawson be one of the first people that came to mind. I agree with you. I'm not huge on Dawson. Look, I think he's a safe-ish type pick. I don't see a heap of downside to him. But if you look at the stats there, 9 tackles, so I think that allows him to have a pretty decent floor. But he did kick 2 goals, 1, only 111 points, got 20 kicks there as well. So with that stat line, 9 tackles, 24 possessions, but 20 of those being kicks and 2 goals, 1, I'd want to be seeing more than 111. So that's probably the flag for me. And when he's playing more of that forward role, if things just aren't quite working for Adelaide, they're not getting much of it, then I don't see him getting a heap of the football as well. And if he's getting the footy in that forward role, he needs to be using it well because he won't be getting as much as when he's playing in the midfield. So look, a safe-ish pick, I don't hate it, but I need to see a lot more upside, I think, personally.
Yeah, I feel like if somebody's having 24 touches, 9 tackles, and kicking a couple of those other premium midfielders, they're registering 130 to 160. Yeah, and if he'd done that, I'm like, okay, Dawson's back, no problems. Okay, here's a underpriced Uber premium who we know can go 115 plus. But you get those stats and you only score 111, massive red flags.
Yeah, agree, mate. Agree.
The one that everybody wants to pick in their forward line, I actually barely had this guy in. I know he's getting the updated midfield time. And if we go back to the DFS, we will see there that he did have a huge chunk of CBAs, and that is Isaac Rankin. Where do you sit on Isaac, mate?
Oh, I sit right on the fence. I know that's not what people want to hear. I'm finding this really difficult to predict the CBA mix at Adelaide. Is this going to be a true reflection? Do they need him more up forward? Oh, Swizz, it's so tough to gauge. The talent is undeniable. The talent is undeniable, this bloke. I don't mind his buy. It's just, do I want to go a Rankin or do I want to go cheaper, get a Garcia type, get a Baz type, get a Sanders type? Because I think the new meta, mate, we have to be going heavier down back. We have to be going heavier there. Where are we getting the money from? It's got to be somewhere. It's got to be pinching here and there. And because of that, Rankin, I can't run with him at the moment. Horne-Francis is lock. And then I've just got to go McRae and then some of those cheaper options from there because I need to invest in the back line. So that's one thing that's probably putting me off. In saying that, could it be a move if you want to restructure? If you were, say, you're going 3 premiums in your midfield, you drop one, and one of them was Bont, for example, you drop Bont to a Rankin, that can then allow you to get an extra rookie on field that you're confident about, maybe Driscoll, a Sardis type, a Sheldrick type, Nevitt maybe that was on the bench. That may be a scenario where you get Rankin in. But no, for me, mate, it's mainly structure at the moment. And I don't know if that CBA rate that we saw is realistic or if it's a bit of fool's gold. That too many question marks at this stage for me to be confident in the pick. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment.
Too many mouths to feed. Like, yeah, as you can look there, it's Dawson. We've got Rankin, Matt Crouch, Saligo, who looked really good. You scroll down, it's Peatling, obviously, who they've brought in, and then the young Sid Draper. And I feel like they're all going to get opportunities through that midfield. Sid Draper, unlike what we saw of Levi Ashcroft, I feel like he needs more time in that midfield to be a good scorer. It's the local boy. They're going to want to give as much opportunity to at some point throughout the season. So he's going to be there and getting some CBAs. Matt Crouch, as much as like a lot of people thinking maybe we could move past him or whatever, he might have been their best player the other night again. So it's a hard one to go past him. Saligo, is this the breakout? I've heard people saying this. Could this be his breakout year? Maybe jump on, but he needs bulk CBAs, I feel like, to do that. So they've got so many players in there. They've already pushed Rory Laird back to half back to accommodate what they've got. And, a few of us are jumping off Peatley now because we feel like he probably, as much as his points per minute is good, I feel like he needs to get that little bit more CBA time, because we know his numbers when he gets 50% more CBAs. And no surprise, the other night, again, it was 42% there. So yeah, it's not enough for me to see that spike, what we're going to need from him to be that relevant guy.
Yeah, what I'd quickly like to do, and you touch on the CBAs there, Swizz, I quickly, just with Peatling, quickly want to go through his quarter-by-quarter CBAs. So quarter one, it was 57.1%, and that was actually equal with Rankin, Sligo, and Crouch. 4 of them had 57.1% if these stats are accurate. Second quarter, 42.9%, same as Sligo. Third quarter, he goes bang, 85.7% in the third quarter. So clearly the number one cog in that third quarter, and it was Drape with 57.1%. And then in the last quarter, it is 0 duck eggs. So absolutely nothing for Peatling. And then if we go by the quarter-by-quarter scores, so we see Peatling after the first quarter on 28, all good, love that. By the end of the second quarter, Peatling, 49, so halfway to 100, we're all good with that. End of the third quarter, 77. So I reckon, Swizz, at this point in time, for everyone watching the game, everyone keen on Peatling, 77 at three-quarter time, beautiful. This is probably what we want to see. And then with the 0% CBAs in the last quarter, he goes from 77 and actually ends up on a 70. So this is where it comes back to those question marks. In that last quarter, did they just say, right, we just want to see what it's like with Sid Draper in there. Give him the keys to the midfield just for the last quarter. It's a young fellow. We want to see what he's got to offer, and maybe put his hand up for that 23rd, that sub role, maybe come round one. And just James Peatley, just spend a bit of time up forward, mate. Have a little bit of a rest, and your services won't be needed for the last quarter. What would have happened if Peatling had have got another 40% CBAs in that last quarter? Well, looking at the data, he's likely to be going close to triple figures, which I think then changed some people's opinions about him. So it's all about that CBA rate. You just touched on it before. If it's 50 and above, we're probably laughing. But it wasn't in this particular game. But it's that last quarter that's really got me thinking. It's that Rankin CBA that's really got me thinking. Look, realistically, do some of those go back to Peatling? And does that 0% in the last quarter come back to the mean? Even if it's 30% in the last quarter, I still think that adds up to almost be enough, Swizz. But again, question marks, and I don't have the answers. I'm just thinking out loud here, almost having a counselling Supercoach session with myself in my head and with you at the moment, mate, because he's a tough one to gauge for me. I don't think it's as easy as just wiping him off. It's not as easy as going, yep, let's get him in. So
my worry there, as you said, was the fact of if he, that last quarter, had the 0 CBAs but still put some score on, I'm like, okay, there's, I'm pretty happy with the fact that he can still score in the other roles. We've seen that he can, still score, but not as well as when he's got the CBAs. But like we were talking about Levi Ashcroft before, where it didn't matter. He doesn't have the CBAs. He still finds ways to score. Just that good. Where Peatling, it does seem the fact that he needs to be in the CBAs there to get his scoring really going. And my worry then is, what's Adelaide's sort of preferred lineup when the game's on the line? Or if they get an injury in game, who's the one coming out to cover that? Because it's not going to be Matt Crouch because he's one-dimensional. So now is it Dawson because he's the captain and he can kind of fill all roles? Or is it Peatling, the guy that, he's been a bit of a role filler as well too? So if I knew he was kind of locked in there, is that clear, like when Josh Dunkley moved from the Bulldogs to Brisbane, came the clear number 2 guy. If that was Peatling, no problems. Or if Matt Crouch had a long-term injury, 100% I'm on that train. But watching Crouch, watching Saligo, who I'm feeling like at the moment are probably the number 2 and 3 guys, and Rankin is such an exciting burst player who they're going to want to get in there, who could potentially be the number 2 guy as well. where does Peatling fall in here? And if the game is on the line in the last quarter where there's a chance to win, and we know those points are like gold, does Peatling get pushed out? Because they want Rankin in that ball. They want Dawson around the ball. And all of a sudden, Peatling's not getting the CBAs, not getting around the ball. And if he's not around the ball, he's not scoring.
I don't know, Swizz.
Sorry to throw that out. Yes, it's a good one. And I'm sure our listeners are thinking the exact same thing. So it's a hard one. For me, it's not a hard, it's not like it's a hard no. But he's more no than he is yes for me, because I feel like there's just other options. Like I can go down and pick up a rookie option because there's so many of them in the midfield that I want to get. Levi, Sardis, Foz now who look good for the Kangaroos. There's Harvey Langford. Like I could go on and on and on about these, high priced but rookie players for us at under 200K. Or there's guys in the 400s, Chera, Oliver, Callahan, Will Ashcroft, that I feel like rolls better, potential scoring could be better. So I'm just like, Peatling's just kind of in no man's land for me. And it could come back and bite me for sure. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't like players where I've got to have so many questions that I can't exactly answer, because if the answers aren't clear, then I'd rather go with someone where I'm like, yeah, I can go bang, Callahan. He's the number one. I can see he's the number one guy. He's got scoring history, no doubts. And if it comes back to bite me, so be it. There'll be people who will go, nah, I'm willing to back it in. Awesome. And you might get the jump start, but there is a lot of risk and reward there with Peatling.
Absolutely. I think the same goes with basically all of those Adelaide midfielders. Rankin we talked on before, question marks. And I know Peatling is cheap for what he could potentially produce, but he's not cheap at the same time with so many question marks. It's not like we've got even a 200K player. If he's 200K, and I know he's not, but it's like, yeah, let's just jump on. The risk is 100% worth it. But at 350 odd, with all the other options we've got, yeah, it is a risk. It is a risk. So not my side for now, mate.
And in that last quarter, if he'd had like no percent or low percent time on ground, I'm like, okay, there's a reason for it. No problem. He still played, nearly 70% for that quarter for one touch. So to me, I'm like, okay, he was taken out of that midfield and couldn't get near the ball. I'm just like, is this going to be something that's could happen if all Adelaide players are fit in that midfield group? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, mate. And one last thing, I suppose, on Peatling, the way you could look at it, is that most of the other mid-price players we're looking at, Clary's, Cheras, these guys, they're all higher priced than Peatling. So worst case scenario, you've picked the wrong mid-pricer for some reason. Peatling pops off, those CBAs are up, nice little correction trade, and you're probably banking between 100, even up to 150K, which you can just stash in the bank and then, hey, even boost early if you want to be aggressive like Jovan last year, fix up a couple of things. So I think it can also be an exit strategy in a way for a Swizz. Just looking at who I think people are likely to select as mid-prices in their midfield.
Yeah, it's way easier that way. So I would rather start. I don't want to go Peatling down to one of the expensive rookies, because I think the expensive rookies, if I'm going to correct, I'm going to correct to the one that I haven't picked up, because there's so many of them. And as we've run through just there, I'm trying to work out, like even Sheldrick's another one, Nevitt. So if you're not starting one of them or two of them, you can just go premium rookie to premium rookie, no problems. Where a lot of people are looking at, as we said, Clary, Cheras, all these 400, 450 guys, even in your defense, your Roberts, your Shorts, your Perrymans. So there could be a rookie defender that pops off, and you go, hey, I need to get that rookie defender. All right, who's it going to replace? Well, actually, Peatling is popping off. Short did exactly what we expect and burn us all. And okay, I want to get him out, get the rookie defender in. Oh, cool, Peatling's popping off. I need a midfielder. I'll just go get him. Or I'll use the flex position and I'll just move somebody into the defense. I'll go get Peatling. I'll just shove him in the flex for now until I sort of can sort out my team from there. So I would rather go down from this, have an option there from all these 400 to 450 guys. And if Peatling goes, well, cool, it's an easy one. I'll make 100K and we go from there.
Shows your experience Swizz, really does, because what's important in the game with any of our starting selections is looking at future plans. We need to look at worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and you've obviously thought about it, mate, with the Shorts and these guys. It can change your whole structure in a way. So I really love the fact, and that's just great advice to anyone that's listening. Whoever you're selecting in your team, plan ahead. If things go bad, what do I do? If you're not selecting someone and they pop off, well, what's my plan to potentially get him in? You've got to have so many options up your sleeve. Get a notebook, write it down, get a Word document going. Just keep a track of yourself, keep a track of your future plans, and have something in place.
Yeah, for sure, mate. And as I always say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
I'm my own worst enemy with that. We'll quickly touch on these Crows rookies because there are a few. Unfortunately, none of them really sold themselves as well as we want. Draper, the time on ground was the issue. Once he came on, he looked great. He's one, again, I would rather hold off, go these other guys and correct it if Adelaide were to get an injury and he gets more game time up, because once he gets the game time, I think he's going to be a brilliant player. But as you can see there, 39% game on time on ground. Daniel Curtin, who was a quite popular choice for some people in their forward line. There's just so many better forward options for us at the moment where I think we can just hold off going there. He's still in 11% of teams. Actually, one I didn't say for the Lions was Dev Robertson, who I think he's still quite a still big owner, 7%. Like if you haven't looked at your team for whatever reason, move him on. He's not even in the mix. Daniel Curtin, you can flick him off. A couple of those Crow rookies, just monitor, because they might get opportunities and get a run of it at some point. But for now, you can just kind of let them go.
Agree with you. Like he looked electric, Draper, absolutely electric. But the time on ground just wasn't there. If you had played 3 quarters and did what he'd done in even 3 quarters, then I'd be pretty happy. But we can't be selecting someone at around the 190K mark with question marks about their job security. We need to be really confident. So it's not a talent thing. It comes down to job security and time on ground.
35% ownership of time of recording is Draper.
Wow, that's high.
Yeah, it is huge. Especially when you're comparing to these other guys. So that's the thing. If we didn't have these other midfield rookies, I'd be like, sure, Draper will ride it early, and he's going to improve as it goes on. But as I've said, you've got Nod, Sardis, Ashcroft, Sheldrick, Nevitt, Langford, Xavier, Lindsay, Fino Sutherland. And at some point, we're probably going to have the Richmond boys, Laylor and Smiley. So there is so many. It's a deep draft. We knew all about this draft anyway. And the funny thing is, maybe it's just because Jagger Smith went out of our sides and a lot of people thought, well, Draper's the obvious option there. But I would personally be stepping away from that, look at these other options. And then, if you have to correct and Draper comes out and goes bang, bang, cool, no problems. But it doesn't seem to be the case at the moment.
Agreed, mate. And he's if he does pop for some reason, as we said with a few players, it's a very easy sideways trade to the other 200, 190K rookie you've got that hasn't popped and hasn't worked out. So, good discussion about the rookies there, but not hugely relevant, I don't think, at this point. But at some stage in the season, when Draper gets a proper run, we'll certainly have a good look at him.
Yep, no, 100%, mate. Well, I think that covers everything in this preseason game. Obviously there was a lot to talk about, especially from the premium point of view. Anything you'd like to add before we wrap it up, mate?
No, probably just an apology, Swizz, because when you messaged me earlier today, you said, have you got 15, 20 minutes up your sleeve? And I've just looked at the recording time. And I've done it to you again, mate. So I think it's because it's Brisbane as well. I love my own side, but I do apologise, mate. I've probably gone double over what you were doing. I know that you've got other people coming on. It's probably like the doctor's surgery where you've got all your appointment times and some bugger just puts you back. So that's probably me today. So I do apologise for that. I know you've got some legends coming on very, very soon. But just thanks again for the opportunity to come on and chat with you, mate. You're a wonderful man, one of my favourites in the community, and look forward to many more chats during the season. I know that we do pretty much every day through Messenger and Twitter and all that sort of stuff, but good to officially get on another video with you Swizz and chat about Lions and the Crows, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, no problems. I don't care if it goes 3, 4, 10 times. I don't think the fans will either. We love listening to you, mate.
I appreciate it, buddy. I appreciate it. And yeah, again, for anyone that hasn't already subscribed to Supercoach Insider, three of the best. I'm not going to say who's my favorite because I love them all, but make sure that you do. These guys are on all the different platforms as well. Swizz has just been off his head working with content this pre-season, all the team previews, special guests he's had on. It goes to show a lot about him and his standing in the community. So, yeah, for any reason, if you're not signed up or subscribed, make sure that you do, because you wouldn't find a better bunch of blokes on this channel.
Same with you guys, mate. That's why we work so well together. Appreciate it, mate. Appreciate the community. Thank you for joining us for another review, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Cheers, guys.